What's up, everybody?
Hello.
How's your day going?
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Great. We're twinning.
We're twinning.
I feel like this happens a lot, actually. My husband
much.
would say that it's because I only own Calvary clothes.
I mean, that's a lot of us. Our leaders do the same thing, I feel like, too.
They do.
We buy cool stuff. That's why.
That's true.
But
They're comfy.
if you want any of these things, let us know. We have
do.
more for sale.
Yes.
Cool, y'all. Well, we are back this week. Conversation on words last week went well. Just kind of talking about how words are powerful, right?
Yeah.
And just it felt like a good launching place to just be more intentional with like what we say and how we think about it. Like with your 7th grade girls, was there anything cool that stuck out?
Yeah, I think it was just a recognizing like how ours actually was about how we don't listen. So a lot of my girls were talking about how they just talk a lot and like what does that look like? And then I have one who doesn't feel comfortable to talk anywhere. So it's like why does that happen? And again, it's the power of like having words but then using them correctly. And also like we had some sisters and they were talking about how they like talk over each other, which is also me and my sister. And so figuring out that dynamic. So yeah.
And I also think too, the more I think of this topic, like just culturally, we are more numb to the power of words than ever because we are so inundated with just like,
So much.
we're never quiet. We're listening to music or podcasts or like videos or whatever it is, constantly consuming or speaking. And there's just no dead space. And I feel like because of that, words have like lost a lot of power and meaning.
Yeah.
Especially with this next generation who just grew up so used to that.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
it's good.
But
good
they also
conversations.
like realize like the sister thing, they recognize when they don't get a turn to share. So it's interesting of like, I do have words that I want to be able to express and I'm not, there's no gap for that. Right. And then like rushing to finish other people's sentences so I can at least get my thought in.
Yep.
Which is totally, I do all the time. And so you're like, yes, was that piece of just the slowing down, because your charge was to like slow down before and listen before we responded on Sunday. So practicing that will be good.
Cool. Absolutely. And I think this week we're just going to build on that, right? So this week we're hitting like gossip and like relationships and conversation in those places, which the slowing down piece like applies to a lot
of that.
Right?
Yes.
Because like so much of our like gossip or like rough conversations are fueled by our emotions or our anger or our like moments of weakness, right? Where if we could take a breath and slow down, like I'm teaching my 3-year-old, right? Daniel Tiger, so helpful. But like it's that same idea, right? Though being able to take a breath, slow down, like take a step back from a conversation to speak truth in spaces, I think is so good.
Yeah.
So this week we're going, that's where we're going.
Gossip.
Core passage I'm looking at is like Ephesians 4, which I love this. So Ephesians 4:32, the be kind to one another passage. Whenever me and my brother fought when we were kids, we had to write that down like 15 times, the whole verse.
Oh,
so it's like burned into my brain.
Yes, it is.
And I love it. But no, I just think it's fun to teach on and how full circle that goes. But yeah, so that's kind of where we're going. And in that passage, it talks about like, being kind to one another, right? Tenderhearted, forgiving one another just as God and through Christ forgave us. Like, I think that is the core of where we're going, because it's like we need to first be motivated about how much God loves us, right? And seeing like how much we don't deserve that and letting that kind of fuel the way that we love on other people, right? How we can be more empathetic and forgiving and caring for them when we see how much we didn't deserve what Christ has given us, right? So I think that charge is kind of like where the heart of where we need to go. And then from there, we're going to talk about like forgiveness, which is really big, right? Even when your friends don't deserve it. What does that look like? How can you move through that? Because we don't forgive, like that bitterness just stirs and like you're not settled, right? So talk about that. Talk about speaking truth and love is a big part of this passage, which is like tricky.
Very tricky.
Right? So
it's
tricky.
Complicated.
So talking about that. And then it also talks about not having like malice or anger or frustration and these things built up in your heart, which is that those aren't the words that are coming out, those are heart condition issues, right? So just being able to talk about like, hey, when do you need to take a step back? When do you need to be aware of how you're feeling and how your emotions are driving things instead of like truth and showing more empathy of like how's someone else feeling in this, and not just like selfishly, what do I want here?
Right.
So,
and that's what we talked about on Sunday. Actually, it was just like how sometimes our words are reaction of how someone hurt us and we were angry, so we want everyone else to feel that anger, so we use our words in like vehemently where we're just like hurting people left and right with them. I think too, when you think about like how we feel about who we are in Jesus, it also gives us the ability to give people the benefit of the doubt, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, okay, well, maybe that person didn't actually mean to say it that way. Or maybe that the words that they chose this morning was only because of this other stuff going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that in itself can shut down a lot of gossip of just like, is that really what someone would actually do?
Right.
No.
Right.
Okay, well,
Right.
then why would... then they're just, that's not true, or someone's lying, or whatever.
Or taken out of context, or different pieces of that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I think sometimes we just are so quick to assume the negative that when we hear anything, we just assume that it must be true.
Right.
And that's not always the case.
No, absolutely. Right. And but it's hard to have that empathy, right?
Yeah.
But it's so good to talk about the importance of that and taking a step back to
Right.
get there. So we'll hit all that. We'll hit Matthew 18 briefly of just like the practical pieces of like, hey, you're in conflict, and here's the way God tells us to move through that, right? So taking it past just gossip, taking it to conflict. You got an issue with someone. What do I do? Right. Going to them first. They don't hear it, bringing someone else in. If they don't hear it, making it a little bit of a bigger thing, and then praying through that, going through that honestly, and seeing where to go. So we want to get practical this week, but we also want to get to the heart.
Right.
Issue,
I think,
right?
Yeah, it's even like in Proverbs, it talks about gossip like separates close friends. It's like this can really do deeper damage than we really realize. And I think sometimes we think like, well, it's not a big deal because I'm not the actual person that shared the words, right? Like I just am telling you that someone else is telling me about things about you, but actually like that's super hurtful, and so it's not helping. It's like I should go to the person and be like, hey, I don't appreciate you talking about my friend like that. I think she actually is a really cool person.
Right, because you are complicit if you're just letting it happen around you, or you're continuing to do that instead of cutting it off.
Yes, because I think it's easy to kind of be like, I want to save the situation by like stepping in and trying to facilitate stuff. And I think sometimes like that's actually not what needs to happen. I need to turn to the person and stop it and be like, if you have a problem, go to that person directly. I don't need to be in the middle being like, oh, here, let me moderate. This is how I say, and this is, so it's like, then confusion happens again, and then all of a sudden we're in this huge conflict, and it's not what it needs to be.
Not what it needs to be. I'm with you. Parents or people watching this, parents or leaders at home, what would be a few questions you have that would be good to like throw around the dinner table this week around the topic?
I think like for our students, they would love to have a conversation about like, what do I do? Like, how do I actually stop? How do I realize where's the line between like telling you how I feel about someone versus gossiping about someone? Because I think that sometimes is blurry. And then even as a family, that'd be a great conversation about like, because in your family, do you guys gossip? Or is it like when you talk about other people, what's the purpose of that, right? Is my purpose to care for them? Then why am I talking about them? So like having those conversations about like, but also knowing that like a student needs a safe place to debrief and talk through everything, right? And so I need to have someone that I can trust to like understand. I'm not saying badly about this person, but I just need you to know how I feel. Right?
Absolutely. No, I think that's good.
Those conversations where it can just be a little bit more practical to get some advice from parents would be super helpful. And
I think the other thing too is to talk about like the truth love scale. Like we want to balance that well, right? To speak the truth in love, but we all have a tendency to kind of like sit one way or another. So just asking an open conversation of like, where do you think I stand, or where do you think you stand, and being able to kind of talk that, because sometimes we're super unaware of how we come across, right? Or what ways we focus on things. So I think that's another good one.
Yeah,
but
that'd be perfect.
It's gonna be a good week. We're excited about it.
Yeah.
Sweet, y'all. We'll see you next week.
See ya.